So I am going to pass it over for the first 5 minutes and as an individual to the Honorable Michelle Odette. Minister or Senator?
Oui, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, Senator, indeed.
Et bien sûr, je veux dire.
And I would like to thank the Anishinaabe Nation for welcoming me every day on their territory and allowing me to continue my work that is important to me and to my spirit. I would like to thank everyone here in the room and virtually on your Indigenous territories. It is important to voice my perspective on this important study on the relationship between resource exploitation and the rise of violence against Indigenous women and girls in Canada. And this is in accordance with Calls for Justice 13.4 and 13.5 of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. So you will know why it is so important for me to be here. However, I'm sure you won't be surprised that I am disappointed and frustrated at the lack of information on the implementation of the calls for justice. And these were proposed on June 3rd, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were celebrating the release of that report and a national action plan. The observation is that after reading the progress report of the National Action Plan, not much has been implemented. What is most important is having a mechanism for monitoring and coordination. There is still no coordinated approach. There is no guaranteed minimum income and no 24-hour in-person support. A lot is lacking throughout Canada, and you have seen in the Globe and Mail, and I will quote in English.
Liberal announcement, many millions fund to support Indigenous women and girls facing gender-based violence. The money sit largely untouched, according to government figures as May 31st. More than half of the fund is allocated to the construction of at least 38 new shelters and 50 transitional homes across Canada. But none of that money has been allocated. The fund remaining of 304 millions is intended to support the running of the new shelter as well as violence prevention activities. The lack of construction means no operational funding has been spent, but the government has spent 12.6 millions
12.6
activities representing less than 2% of that total fund. Alors, comme je l'ai mentionné,
as I have mentioned many times, all calls for justice are important. But 1.7 on the ombudsperson and a tribunal and 1.10 on reporting need to be implemented, and this needed to be done yesterday. Transparency, accountability, and reporting, all of these things are key. I hope that you will consider those calls for justice as well. In 2022, too many Indigenous women and girls don't feel safe. And the data speaks for itself. Last month, in the space of 2 weeks, 3 Indigenous women in Miskazan's riding were murdered. And we know now that the situation is problematic, and I would like to offer my deepest condolences. Every time we hear sad news like this, we think of the families and we send them our love and our condolences. We must protect human rights, women's rights. We need to put in place safeguards, strong safeguards that will be based on laws and rules. For example, the $15 million penalty that XLR Metal and an associated company, a mining company, have just been fined for being found guilty of environmental violations. Imagine if such mechanisms could be implemented to protect Indigenous women. That is the most recent example that I have. Now, beyond the physical and sexual abuse, resource exploitation has a significant impact on Indigenous women and other women as well. We have to examine our spiritual relationship with nature and wildlife and flora. Holistic health and environmental health are also impacted by this abuse. In conclusion, we all have a responsibility, regardless of where we are on this territory, in order to protect women and girls and survivors and the families who spoke up during the inquiry. I wish you all the best for your inquiry, and I will be eager to answer your questions.